We welcome you back to the Northern Quest Casino. We're here in Spokane, Washington. We come now to our main event. Battle for the IBF Featherweight World Title. Cristóbal Cruz and Orlando Salido. And welcome back, Barry Tompkins, along with Wally Matthews. And Wally, I hate to keep falling back on this old, what has become a cliche, but styles make fights. And if that's so, this should be a heck of a fight.
Yeah, it really should. You know, one thing you should know about Cristóbal Cruz and that in beating Thomas Machaba in his last fight, he threw 1,500 punches in 12 rounds. We asked him today, can you possibly duplicate that? He said, I'll probably throw double tonight. Now, obviously, he's not going to do that, but he's going to be a very, very busy man. And one thing I'll tell you about Orlando Salido, he is a great body puncher. He's a very, very schooled fighter. Don't be thrown off. I said it in the open by the 20 losses between these two guys. A lot of them came early in their career, and these are not the kind of guys who are protected young, early in their careers by promoters or managers. They're thrown in with just about anybody. They're a couple of tough guys.
28 years of experience in this fight. Let's take a look at the head-to-head. And Cristóbal Cruz, 31 years old. He's been fighting for 16 years. Orlando Salido's been fighting professionally for 12 years. And other than that, not a lot to choose. A little bit of a reach advantage for Salido, but he's not going to have to look for Cruz.
No, he certainly isn't. Here are the rules that they'll fight under tonight. Here, no 3 knockdown rule, no standing 8 count. Only the referee can stop the fight, and neither fighter can be saved by the bell in any round.
So it's one of those fights where you really toss a coin and you say, who's right on this night? Here comes Orlando Salido into the ring, and he's made this walk a whole bunch of times.
Yeah, he really has. You know, he had his big night against Robert Guerrero in 2006. Post-fight test came up positive for steroids, so his great win that night was negated, changed to a no contest tonight. He gets another shot, fight for a vacant title. And I'll tell you what, I like him to win this fight, but I think it's going to be a very, very tough battle.
Yeah, I do too. He was suspended for more than a year. Since he's come back, he's won 4 fights in a row. So he's picked up kind of where he left off, but he does feel he's got some amends to make for what happened in the Guerrero fight.
Yeah, and one of the things that Cristóbal Cruz said to us today is that, hey, look, without steroids, he's a different guy, and we think that he's going to be a lot weaker than he was that night against Guerrero. But honestly, having seen Salido in his fight since, I don't see a lot of drop-off. And here comes Cruz now.
Yeah, and he's going to get tested. Cristóbal Cruz clearly is going to test Orlando Salido. We said he's a busy fighter, and busy really is an understatement.
Yeah, he is very busy, and he's one of these guys who doesn't do anything particularly well, but he does a lot of everything that he does. Throws a lot of punches, sometimes loops his punches a little bit, which might leave him vulnerable to body shots from Salido, but he's a guy who does wear you down. If you don't come in here ready to go 12 hard rounds, he will take it from you.
And I have an idea that's what this is going to be, 12 hard rounds. Let's get to the center of the ring, meet the fighters for our main event. Once more, Michael Williams.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Airway Heights, Washington, as tonight, Arthur Palullo's Banner Promotions and Rodney Berman's Golden Gloves Promotions in association with the Northern Quest Casino present the Fight Night on Versus. Main event of the evening, 12 rounds of action for the vacant IBF Featherweight Championship of the World. Sanctioned by the State of Washington Department of Licensing, Professional Athletics Program Manager Sandra Gonzalez, Event Inspector Roy Silbert. This world title bout also sanctioned by the International Boxing Federation. Supervising ringside is Mr. Darryl Peoples. The 3 judges ringside to score this bout will be Barry Drucksmann, Gene Williams, and Patrick Russell. And when the action begins, the 3rd man inside of the ring will be referee Jack Reese. And now, ladies and gentlemen, introducing first, fighting out of the blue corner. He wears the black and gold and weighed in tonight at 126 pounds. Currently ranked number 3 in the world by the IBF. His professional record, including a string of 8 straight victories, now stands at 31 wins against 9 defeats with 2 draws and 20 victories by way of knockout. Hailing from Ciudad Obregón, Sonora, Mexico, introducing Orlando Siri Salido. And across the ring, his adversary fighting out of the red corner. He wears the green with gold trim and weighed in tonight exactly the same at 126 pounds. Earlier in 2008, en route to capturing a world title, he broke the CompuBox record for most punches thrown in a 12-round featherweight title bout. His professional record now stands at 36 wins against 11 defeats with 1 draw, 23 wins by way of knockout, and tonight he comes in ranked number 4 in the world by the IBF. Ladies and gentlemen, introducing the former featherweight world champion, Cristóbal La Condon Cruz.
Center ring. Pelea limpio, pelea duro, escúcheme todo, ¿ok? Buena suerte, toca las manos, buena suerte.
So we're just about set to go for the IBF Featherweight Championship, and Cristóbal, we expect, will be right on the chest of Salido, and this could come down to just a question of who's right on this night in Spokane.
Yeah, and really, who's ready to fight at that kind of pace? Because if you don't come in mentally and physically ready to go 12 rounds with Cristóbal Cruz, you could be surprised.
Now, Cruz just 3-3 in his last 6 fights, so he's got to prove both to himself and, of course, to Salido that he is the same fighter he was a few years back.
Yeah, it's true, but, you know, if you look at the guys that he lost to, I mean, he lost to Zahir Rahim, and he lost, you know, pretty widely, but basically he was chasing the whole night. I mean, you know, it really wasn't the kind of fight that he likes to fight. I mean, he went the distance with Francisco Lorenzo and lost. You know, a good fighter. He beat Thomas Mashaba, another good fighter. I mean, this guy goes the distance almost every time he's in there. So you got to bring your lunch, and I'll tell you what, I don't think Salido's the type to look past anybody, but if he is, you know, he could be in for a bad night.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with that. First round, largely feeling out kind of round. Looks like Salido looking to counter early in this fight.
Well, he did say today that he would tailor, you know, what he did tonight according to whatever Cruz did. And Cruz is not putting nearly as much pressure as he has in the past, or as I think the Salido people expected.
Not so far. Short right hand in there by Salido.
Now, the thing about Salido that I should say Cruz that Salido thinks he can exploit is that Cruz does tend to throw his punches wide, especially his right hand. He throws it over the top, and he thinks, and I'm talking about Salido, thinks that he can drop a left hook to the body.
Quick left hand slipped in by Cruz. This is with an overhand right.
Both of the fighters are pretty much bone dry right now. I think we need a little warm-up time here.
Well, you know, we mentioned earlier that it's cold outside, but it's also cool in this building.
Yeah, it is.
Sneaky right hand by Cruz. And the air outside, of course, is very dry also.
Yeah, it's certainly not conducive, you know, to quick starts by guys, you know, holding a sweat very well. As you can see, both of these guys look like they're cold.
So 20 seconds remaining in round 1. Very close round. One shot slipped a little bit low from Cruz. Very tough round to score this first round. And a 1. We're coming back.
Cruz.
So we come to round number 2. Salido in the black trunks and Cruz in the green. Cruz incidentally brought a whole bunch of family members up with him from Chiapas.
He sure lives. That's a long trip.
I'll say it, and there are no non-stops from Chiapas to Spokane. I can tell you that.
No, can't imagine. You know, Salido looks to me like the bigger man, even though they both have always, you know, fought between 126 and 130. He just looks physically like he's a bigger man. I thought he had a slight edge in the first round. I mean, not a great first round.
I gave him the first round also. Just I thought he countered a little bit better. There's a quick right hand from Cruz.
Stop. Sepárese.
Cruz
Cruz is not a guy who's necessarily going to get you out of there with 1 or 2 punches, but he can wear you down.
Yeah, I had said earlier I had done a fight with him in Mexico earlier this year against Acosta, and he got him out with just a single beautiful left hook to the body. So I know he can do that, but he's generally a little bit more deliberate in there.
Suéltalo, suéltalo.
Stepping on the gas a little bit more here in this second round is Cruz.
Stop. Break. Sepárese.
You know, it's funny, right now neither one seems to know exactly how to start an attack against the other guy.
Yeah, isn't that, I was thinking the same thing. And there seems to be a great deal of respect between these two.
Yeah, it seems like each one of them is waiting for the other to commit himself before they do something. It's a pretty good right hand by
I'll say it
Cruz.
was.
Back Salido up. And then he snuck a little left hook in there as well.
He throws some sneaky, quick, short punches.
Yeah, he's an unorthodox guy because you're absolutely right. He'll throw some looping shots and you think you know where he's coming from, and then suddenly he'll slip in a really short left hook like the one he just landed.
Salido got there with the right hand. Short with that one. Cruz seems able to get inside of the punches of Salido right now.
This gentleman seems to be warming up to the task now.
20 seconds left, round 2. This for the IBF Featherweight Championship. Cruz in the green, Salido in the black. And I think really pretty good second round for Cristóbal Cruz.
I agree.
We're coming back.
Time. 3. Stay back, stay back, stay back.
So round number 3, things loosening up a little bit in the second round. First round was a pretty tentative round.
Yeah, but you know, you called it right. You said you thought Cruz had a good round, and the numbers tell us he out-connected Salido 17-12. I thought he had a slight edge, you know, without the numbers. It looked like it was his round. Close fight.
No.
That's a slip.
Here, no knockdown, no knockdown. ¿Está bien? Knocked.
You know, these two fighters have been waiting so long for this chance. Vacant title, one of them's going home as a world champion. We've pointed out each of them fighting 15 years. You know, a lot of fights between them, a lot of losses, a lot of victories. I can't imagine this fight is going to stay as tame as it's been so far.
Pretty good right hand there by Salido, and another one. Salido just kind of opening up a little bit.
Yeah. See, now this is the kind of fight that Cruz fought in his last fight.
Sepárese.
He's throwing punches from every possible angle, overwhelmed this guy, swarmed Mashaba, who's a strong guy himself. You know, just gradually, he won a split decision, but I mean, clearly, I thought he won the fight, and he basically did it by overwhelming his men, wearing them down.
In the late rounds, especially.
Yep. Yes, sir.
Cruz talked about retiring a couple of years back. Family man.
Yeah, I think they both had moments in their career when they thought about giving it up, and you know, thankfully for both of them they didn't, and here they are. You know, I mean, Salido at times had thought that his career was not going anywhere, and Cruz, I should say, Salido was knocked out in his first pro fight as a 15-year-old. So obviously he must not have been all that optimistic about his prospects, but here we are. That was in 1996. Here we are in 2008. He's fighting for a world title.
Yeah, he fought a 25-year-old in that first fight.
Tough assignment.
Yeah, it is. Well, interestingly enough, he was 11-6 with a draw in his first 18 fights. And since that time, he's 20-3, and over his last 18 fights, he's 17-1.
Yeah, I mean, there's certainly something to be said about sticking it out. You know, not too many fighters would do that at that point. You've got to be discouraged. And, you know, this is the culmination of it.
Wild shot by Salido. Salido fighting this round at longer range.
Yeah, I was going to say, Salido, he's fighting at longer range, and he's having more trouble landing punches than I thought he would.
But he is making Cruz miss in this round. so far, very difficult fight to score. Good right hand by Salido.
Time!
All right, here's Salido in round 3. You see a good short right hand. That's what he does best. He hasn't really done very much of that so far in this fight.
No, it's been a seesaw kind of fight. Neither fighter really taking any kind of control of this fight so far. And the fight being fought at much more at long range than I expected it would be since the first round.
Yeah, a lot of respect from both sides here, but Salido, the shorter, quicker puncher, I just thought that he would he'd do a better job of countering Cruz so far, but he hasn't.
Still a long way to go in this fight, 12 rounds.
Again, you see that Salido just kind of holding back a little bit. He's in that middle ground there, that kind of neutral zone where he can't really land punches. Got to take that extra step and start working that left hand to the body.
Both these fighters capable of being very quick-handed. They don't always show it. Like there.
See, that's the bad habit that Cristóbal Cruz shows us every so often. And quite frankly, I expected that Salido would take advantage of that much easier than he has so far.
A lot of punches missing in this fight.
Yeah, something about the two styles not quite meshing. I'm surprised. I thought that these guys couldn't miss each other, and actually more often it's like they really can't hit each other.
Yeah, surprising. Huh? We talk about styles make fights, sometimes they don't.
Well, sometimes styles that you see separately you think will work well together, and then they don't. It's tough to figure out why.
Stop. Stop punching. Sepárese.
That was a right hand.
And that was telegraphed. That came from Seattle and still landed. I'm kind of surprised that Salido allowed himself to get hit with that punch.
Tapping counter right hand. He had a shot at him there.
Yeah, not a lot of crispness in the punches of either one of them so far.
No, absolutely.
You see even there, Salido trying to land to the body and kind of lunging to the body instead of snapping those punches in.
A lot of arm punches being thrown by both guys. So we're coming to the end of round 4.
Tiempo.
And another difficult round to score.
Ok, baja tu mano. Mete aire, mete aire. Mete aire, mete aire. Ya estás acomodándote. Con ese paso que estás haciendo sobre la derecha, te estás acomodando, Orlando.
Hearing the voice of Victor Barón.
Cierra la boca.
¿Está bien?
Cuando vaya así, mira, mira, fíjate, mira, mira, ¡pum! ¿Ok? Pero hazlo.
That right hand
Mátalo con los
effective.
rectos, con la espalda frente a las cuerdas, no te va a hacer nada. Ahora, otra cosa.
All right, let's take a look at some of the action in round 4. You'll see there's that overhand right by Cruz, and that seems like the kind of punch that a fighter like Salido should be able to duck and counter, and he didn't. Something a little sluggish about him so far tonight.
Habilidad, ¿ok? ¿Listo? Vamos, hijo.
So we come to round 5. And a wild miss to start the round by Salido.
I just think one of them is going to have to make an adjustment at some point, Barry, here. Otherwise, this is going to be a tough fight all the way, and somebody's going to be very unhappy at the end.
Yeah, I think that's right. Counter right hand by Cruz.
I mean, I just get the feeling like a lot of the exchanges are inconclusive. At the end of the round, you're kind of shaking your head like, who should I give this to? The numbers pretty much bear that out. Cruz has landed 66 punches, Salido 79 punches. So, you know, look, that's a negligible difference spread over 4 rounds.
And a lot of those punches are here it comes punches.
Yeah, like that one.
Yeah. There's a short right hand by Cruz.
I will say this, though. I do not think Cruz is getting to that 1,500 punch count tonight.
Not unless he throws a whole bunch of punches.
Unless he's saving it off in the second half. See, that's decent working there by Salido, but again, it doesn't seem like there's a lot of snap or a lot of power on the shots.
No, it's interesting. I mean, we always talk about fighters getting old in one fight, and I'm not suggesting that this is the case necessarily, but as you take a look
at this. You know what? We have a very, very good audience in terms of scoring. I had it the same way. I guess I don't know if that makes it good or bad, but I got it 2 rounds apiece.
Yep, so do I. And alternate rounds, too.
Right. Exactly.
That was a sharp right hand from Salido, but he had a bigger target than you would have thought.
See, now this is the fight that I expected to see. A lot of close quarters action, a lot of punches being thrown. Did not expect to see them that far apart at any point in the fight.
No, I thought Cruz would be right on his chest.
Stop! Sepárese.
That wild right hand of Cruz, Salido picked it easily that time, but it's a very slow telegraph punch.
Pretty good left hook there by Salido. But if you're in Salido's corner, you got to be a little frustrated. Instead of stepping back from that, you see it coming, step in and land your own left hook. I mean, those are the kind of opportunities that, you know, you don't get that often. The other guy gives it to you, you got to take advantage of it.
Salido pacing up a little bit in this round. Coming to the end of round 5.
Tiempo!
I thought a much better round for Salido.
I agree. A pretty good jab by Cruz there. I'd like to get the numbers. How many times has Cruz thrown a jab today,
Not
scientists?
Not
that many.
He's starting to wear down.
Ya, ¿ok? Vamos a hacer lo que tenemos, lo que has hecho los otros rounds.
Te estás viendo desesperado, Chris. Te estás viendo desesperado.
Mira, Cristóbal, llavea y cruza. Y tira por dentro y por fuera. Y cuando llegues al clinch, no te salgas. Golpéalo y mete en la cabeza. ¿Entiendes? ¿Entiendes? Porque lo que él está haciendo es salir. No salgas, Cristóbal. Vamos a empezar a
pretty
presionarlo
good
más.
corner, though. Only one voice in the corner.
Oh, there's no doubt who's in charge over there.
Sigues presionándolo.
Con tu derecha y alternale. No un solo golpe, una sola combinación, no. Por dentro y por fuera, un par laterales. Ya lo agarraste con esto y ya lo agarraste con la derecha. Vamos, Orlando. Vas arriba.
All right, let's take a look at some round 5 action, and you'll see. Now, that was a nice move by Cruz, very unorthodox. He kind of feinted with his right, then slipped in and landed a pretty good short left hook.
I still gave the round to Salido.
I did too. You know, you can't just take a snapshot and say that's it, and that's what that was.
So we come to round 6. Going 12 for the IBF Featherweight Championship. Orlando Salido in the black trunks. Cristóbal Cruz in the green.
You know, more importantly than the fact that I gave Salido that round is I thought Salido started to look a little bit better. I thought the punches started getting a little bit shorter. He started countering a little bit, you know, taking a little bit better advantage of the openings, although he did miss that one that we talked about with the right hand. But I just saw more of the fight that I expected to get out of Salido in that round.
Stop. Sepárese.
Good right hand. That
Best
buckled
punch
the
of the fight.
knees.
That actually seemed to land high on the forehead. Maybe if it, you know, it's down around the chin, we might have seen a knockdown.
Yeah, clearly rocked him though. His knees buckled.
Cruz is tough, man. He just landed a good left hook. He's not going anywhere yet. Another one.
Suéltalo.
Salido getting a little reckless coming in.
Cruz Cruz again with the right hand. Caught Salido on the way in.
I think Salido got a little happy after that shot. So he did run into some stuff. We should point out, Cruz hasn't been stopped in, I believe, 7 years. You know, he's got 11 losses. He was stopped in the first round. That was back in 2002. Gone the distance with a lot of good fighters, so it takes a bit to get him out of there.
It does seem like Salido, though, is starting to dictate the tempo of the fight.
Yes. Yes, I think he's starting to exert his will.
Lunges into the right hand, did what you suggested that time, ducked under the shot of Cruz.
You know, the natural reaction for a normal human being when somebody's punching at them is to go backwards. But, you know, this is not, there's nothing normal about being in a boxing ring. You have to go toward that punch.
Well, I remember Sugar Ray Leonard telling me in the Marvin Hagler fight that Hagler had hurt him with a shot, and all his instincts said step back, and instead he stepped forward, and Hagler never knew he hurt him.
That was a great night, wasn't it? You made a great call that night.
Well, thank you.
Time. What you mean?
All right, here's the best punch of the fight. And if you have any doubt that Cristóbal Cruz is a durable guy, that was early in the round, and he made it, and he was quite well by the end.
Tough guy, a couple of tough guys.
But you know what? That was by far Salido's biggest round. Connect advantage 20-6 in round 6. So, you know, your eyes are not deceiving you. Salido is certainly starting to take command here.
Picked that right hand of Cruz that time and scored himself. Good shot to the body.
Cruz trying to put pressure on now. You know, Salido hasn't spent all that much time with his back against the ropes, but that seems to be what Cruz wants to do in this round.
That's the way we thought he'd fight the whole fight.
Yeah. Well, you know, there's a reason why fighters do things and why they don't do things. You know, and he might very well have tasted something early in the fight that, you know, escaped our detection that caused him not to, you know, to slow down his attack a little bit.
He seems much more this round in a comfort zone.
You know, I like whenever every so often he drops a jab in there, Cruz. I mean, I don't know why he decides suddenly, you know, now's the time for, because it's not a regular part of his attack.
But it's interesting, these are two old pros, and we were talking about in the last round that maybe Salido was starting to dictate the tempo of the fight, and I'm sure Cruz felt the same thing.
Right.
He's trying to take it back.
Well, you know, that's the thing about boxing at this level. It's a constant series of adjustments. One guy does something different, the other guy has to adjust to it, and then vice versa.
Here are the numbers so far, and you can see they're
close.
Pretty comparable.
Yeah, but you can see Salido also, you know, starting to widen his lead a little bit. But, you know, about the same level of activity in there, just as you would expect, because Salido's the shorter puncher, landing a little bit better. His punches take the more direct route.
There's the jab again. Good. Effective.
And you know, he hasn't landed a lot of great punches in this round, Cruz, but he has been successful in putting some pressure.
Yeah, and he's busier, not allowing Salido to get off first. I think it's a much better round for Cruz.
Yeah, surprisingly, Salido really hasn't pressed that advantage that he seemed to gain with that right hand last round.
So we head for the end of round number 7, and it's been a fight that's been exactly as advertised.
Tempo!
We welcome you back. We prepare to start round number 8, and it was a much more effective and a busier round for Cruz.
Yeah, and you know, the numbers again, and I don't like to rely on the numbers, you know, to replace the analysis of the fight, but Cruz did outland Salido slightly, 23-19 in that round, and you know, I think we both agreed that he had a slight edge.
So we come to round 8. Very close fight so far.
Definitely up for grabs. I got Salido ahead by a point.
That's what I had.
7.
And we don't copy each other. Honest, folks.
Stop. No. Come on. Right?
But I mean, it really is anybody's fight. It's whoever wants it, whoever, you know, can make the right adjustments here to take it, because I mean, right now they're basically trading rounds. I'll win one, you win one, and before you know it, we're going to come up even at the end of 12.
Now, of course, you know the judges will have this completely the other way.
I don't know. I've got full faith in the judges here. And there you go. Look at that. Our online scoring poll has got Cruz slightly ahead.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
You know, it is true. In a close fight like this, it almost depends on what angle you're watching the fight.
Absolutely. And it also, you know, quite honestly, it looks different on television than it does live.
Yes.
I mean, I've covered many fights live and was sure that I saw the fight one way and then went home and watched it on TV and said, geez, that looks different.
Me too.
Neither guy can really break through. You know, they're exchanging punches. Every so often you think one guy's got the upper hand, but nobody. It's like two horses that just can't seem, you know, neither one of them can seem to pull away.
No, that's exactly. Salido in this round is giving Cruz a lot more angles.
Yeah, he seems to be trying a lot of different things, but I tell you what, I'm a little disappointed in him tonight because I knew what to expect from Cruz. You know, and I'm pretty much getting that. He hasn't been as busy as we've seen him in the past, but this is pretty much the fight he fights. Salido, for some reason, seems to lack something. Lacks a little fire for some reason tonight, and I can't imagine why, especially since, you know, this is something both of them have been waiting so long for.
Both those punches of Salido landed on the arms of Cruz. All of those punches, not one of them scored.
Yeah, he's finding Cruz a much more difficult target than I expected him to find him, and also probably than he expected.
He's throwing a lot of punches, but I don't see a lot of those punches landing. So we come to the end of round 8, a busy round for Salido, but did he win a round? Welcome back, round number 9. We're going 12, and it's still a grab bag.
Really is. We're 2/3 of the way through. You know what? I gave Salido a lukewarm vote in the 8th round just on activity alone.
That's what I did.
But I wouldn't be surprised if, you know, the judges give it to Cruz, and I wouldn't be surprised if my scorecard, which has Salido up by 2, is actually the opposite of what they have.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think this fight could go either way, and I wouldn't really question it.
No,
the judges saw
I
it.
certainly wouldn't be outraged. Now you see Salido actually trying to move and box, and you saw, you know, you mentioned it last round. He was giving him angles, but now you see him using the ring, which is rather uncharacteristic, I would say.
Cruz slipped a left hand in and slipped another left hand in close quarters.
Cruz is landing pretty well here. I'll tell you what. It seems like Salido was harder to hit for him when he was standing still.
Crafty fighter. That was a good right hand.
Yeah, he's so unorthodox. There's a lot of things he's doing in there that I think are confusing Salido.
3 punches that landed right there for Cruz. Salido's throwing a lot of punches, but Cruz is landing more.
I'm loving Cruz in this round, I gotta tell you. And I don't know why. I mean, you know, I can't understand why Salido, you know, is actually being hit more in probably his most mobile round of the fight.
The uppercut slipped in.
So the thing about Cruz is he's got a terrific chin, and he stays in the pocket when the other guy's throwing, and just, you know, he doesn't hit you with anything too hard. He just lets his hands go, and he's landing little soft. They look like soft lefts and rights, but obviously they're taking some kind of a toll on Salido.
Nice little hook by Salido over the body. Got Cruz turned.
Yeah, he did have him in a vulnerable position there, but he really hasn't taken advantage. And, you know, Cruz looks like he's vulnerable very often. Salido hasn't really been able to take advantage of it all that much.
There's a left hand.
Well, that didn't even register a response from Cruz. He didn't give any sign of being hit.
And again, he's just doing more work and being more effective here in this round. Good round, I thought, for Cristóbal Cruz. 10th round coming up when we come back to Spokane.
All right, let's take a look at some round 9 action. You see there's that good short left hook underneath by Cruz. And now here comes Salido with almost the same punch. And that's the one I said really didn't register any effect. It just bounced off. That was a good punch.
I thought cumulatively a very good round for Cristóbal Cruz. So we come to round 10. And a fight that is still very much there for the taking.
All right, this is getting really silly. This just in from CompuBox Central. Punches landed in round 9. Cruz 36, Salido 35.
Wow.
So, I mean, you know, they're not making it easy on anybody.
A very difficult fight to judge no matter where you sit. The tempo has picked up over the last couple of rounds too.
See, now Salido's fighting completely different. He's not moving anymore. He's trying to get right in there with him and trade punches. I think that's what he really ought to do. He looks like the bigger and stronger guy. Whoa. Nice snappy jab by Cruz.
2 good jabs by Salido and then the jab by Cruz.
It reminds me of a line that was written about Rocky Marciano more than 50 years ago. The guy wrote he was incredibly clumsy, but occasionally capable of something very skillful. Right? That's Cruz.
Perfect description, yeah. The scoring still with the edge to Cruz.
Wow, look at that. You know what, I must say that my card, if I'm looking at it correctly, and I think I am, I got Salido up by a point, but I wouldn't argue with anybody on this fight. I'm just glad that my card is not going to determine who wins this fight.
And my card is exactly the same as yours. I'm 86-85 for Salido, but can't question the viewers out there. I think their judgment is as good as ours.
Their judgment is probably better than ours.
Maybe.
Salido trying to work inside there, and that's really, I think, where he should have gone to work from the beginning of the fight. Might have been able to take some of the starch out of Cruz, but you know, at this point, Cruz just looks defiant and strong and not about to go anywhere.
Right uppercut lead and then a left hand behind it by Cruz.
Stop.
You can see the percentages still in Salido's favor. Folks at home don't think Cruz winning the fight, and he could be.
But fight scoring is very subjective. You know what? That's why, you know, that there's no real number system or anything that can tell you who won a fight. Salido looks tired. Salido suddenly looked tired to me there.
Just kind of putting his head down. Took a couple of good shots at the bell. So Cruz ended the round very well. Salido started the round very well. I think I'll wait and see what you folks at home think of that round.
Hijo, Él ya no puede.
Meantime, a real sense of urgency in both corners here as we prepare for round 11. And here we go, 2 rounds left in this one. 10th round, another really tough round.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I'm laughing here because I'm looking at the numbers here. Cruz landed 28 punches, Salido landed 26 punches in round 10. But the real significant stat here is that Cruz has now gotten his game into gear. He's thrown over 100 punches in each of the last 4 rounds. So now he's starting to get, to the pace that he's accustomed to fighting at and we're accustomed to seeing him fight at.
Well, I have the fight dead even now as we head into the 11th round. And I think
So
that last round could have gone either way.
I'm waiting for the online people to tell me who won, though.
Exactly.
I think Salido, very subtly is starting to get worn down just by the pace. It's amazing. I mean, it's like being stung by 1,000 gnats. Sooner or later, that's that way.
Got a scratch.
Yeah, I think that's what fighting Cristóbal Cruz is like. And being swarmed by mosquitoes.
And Cruz has really been on the gas in the last couple of rounds, over 100 punches both rounds.
There's that jab that comes out once every couple of rounds. It's funny, I'd like to know how many jabs he's actually missed with this fight. Not too many. He hasn't thrown a lot, but he doesn't miss them.
Cruz clearly looks the fresher of the two right now.
He does. He looks wide-eyed and alert and ready to go. And it's discouraging. Oof, he just landed a nice elbow in there, too.
Better than the punches. There's that chopping, long, loopy right hand.
I'll tell you what, he ain't pretty, but he's effective.
Counter right hand, a left hand behind that.
And Salido's backing up now. He's looked tired to me for the past 3 rounds. He looks confused. He looks like he's out of answers. And I still think he's the better fighter.
I think that's a point well taken. Cruz throws punches from so many different angles. I don't know how you prepare for it.
I think that's exactly right. I think he's a really difficult guy to prepare for and to fight.
He's swelling around the left eye of Salido now.
The interesting thing is that, we talked to both fighters today. We spend a decent amount of time with them. And I'll tell you what, Cristóbal Cruz said he's never even seen Salido fight, not even on tape. So he's basically making this up as he goes along.
Yeah, and he doesn't care.
No.
Not unique to this fight. That's the way he's fought his career.
Yeah.
I think he clearly looks the fresher of the two fighters now. I think you have to harken back to that fight that you talked about earlier with Mashaba, where he came on in the final rounds, and that may be what's happening here.
Exactly the fight he's fighting here. And you see here early in the fight, Salido's hands were getting there first. There was a couple of really big punches. Most of the good punches in the first half of the fight came from Salido. And then little by little, we've seen Cruz start to exert his dominance. We thought it was going the other way in the first half, but just by the sheer numbers, Cruz is starting to take over.
Yep.
And they're down to the last round.
So we come to the last round.
Lo quiero que lo hagas con maestría.
3 minutos, 3 minutos.
Muy vivo, no me bajes las manos y atácalo. Vámonos, hijo.
No te le claves, Orlando.
No quieras cerrar como bloqueó.
I think both corners, of course, realize it's a very close fight. You heard them say in Cruz's corner, 3 minutes, give me 3 minutes. And the last round couldn't come too soon for Salido. His left eye swelling.
Yeah, I mean, you know what? It's amazing. That's a cumulative effect because he hasn't been hit with any really spectacular punches, and yet his face certainly shows the effect of having been hit, as many times as he has.
Cruz starts out working the body, being the busier fighter.
But, I said this in the beginning, there's nothing that Cruz does especially well. He doesn't do anything spectacular. He just does a lot of everything that he does. And now Salido complaining to the referee about the eye.
He was complaining, I think, that Cruz thumbed it.
Yes. A problem which theoretically has been eliminated. The thumbs
Cruz is getting off quicker and just being more effective here.
Over the last 3 rounds, I don't think there's any doubt that the fight has taken a turn in Cruz's favor. There's no doubt about it.
Stop. Break. Sepárese.
Just about midway through the final round.
Tom Salido, man, I am fighting for my professional life right now. He's got to know that at best, you know, he's extremely close in this fight. And he's got to actually, he knows better than we do that he's losing.
Yeah, and he's going backward, which is not going to win you a lot of fights. Well, there he comes forward. Cruz now just kind of laying in on him and has the quicker hands. Just not letting Salido get off.
You know, if Salido wins this round, which is a possibility because he has pinned Cruz to the ropes here for quite a while. On my card, it's going to come up dead even.
Yeah, me too. But so far, I think Cruz has been pretty dominant in this final round.
So I basically throw my hands up and say, let the professionals tell us.
Been an outstanding fight. I mean,
yeah, it really has. After a slow start.
Yeah.
Yeah, it has developed into a very, very good fight.
I mean, 2 game fighters, guys who are real pros.
We could ask them to give us 3 more rounds, just so we can really get a conclusive end.
They could probably do it.
I know one of them could.
Yeah. When Salido looks in the mirror tomorrow morning, he's going to feel as though he was the beaten fighter, whether he wins the fight or loses it. I thought a big round here in the 12th round for Cruz. Crowd loves it.
Bueno.
Wow. All right, I'm going to break ranks with you here. I'm going to give that to Salido, and I'm going to say this is a draw.
Fight, man.
We'll see.
I got it 115, 113.